Have you heard about this personal and professional podcast?
Coaching in Session
with your host, Michael Rearden.
When is the last time we talked about the idea of self? I'm talking about self-compassion, self-esteem, self-care, and self-love. Now, I know I talk about maybe self-compassion sometimes. I talk about self-care sometimes, self-love, but not too much of self-esteem, because it's one of those things that naturally, I guess, just from growing up and being a mindset coach, is that you should have good esteem within you. But then I understand some people, they just have that negative bias to themselves or to whatever they're doing. And when I'm coaching someone, the self-esteem aspect is just my character. So when I'm like helping them through different changes and how they're, approaching certain things, I'm like, no, we're not going to talk that way about ourselves, and we're not going to talk that way about other people, because it doesn't benefit us or them. So this is what I naturally do with self-esteem, where we just go through it naturally with the coaching process. Self-compassion, self-care, and self-love, it is something that you typically have to do more work in versus just bring some attention to with self-esteem. However, we do have this article here that I wrote that we're going to be talking about today, that's talking about the differences between self-compassion, self-esteem, self-care, and self-love. And this is all verses talking about the differences, and then we get into like the pros and the cons of this at the end. But what I will say is that this is in no order of importance. So for example, you might say, well, self-compassion is first. Well, guess what? It doesn't have to be first. Maybe you say self-esteem has to be first, and rightfully so. Having a good esteem about yourself can lead to good compassion. Self-care, right? If you're not caring for yourself, how can you love yourself, right? Of course, we can say that self-care and self-love are the same, or that we might say we're having a self-care day. But the reality is that these terms cannot be just changed to how society is moving. So we might say, it's self-love and self-care to eat a pizza when you're feeling down. Okay, I understand you want a pizza, have a pizza, sure. But don't link it to self-care, because now you're going to say, well, the moment I need to feel care, or the moment I need to feel love, I need a pizza. So now you're hurting your body. And then eventually that's going to hurt your esteem. All right. Now we do have to look at all of these different aspects and how they, I guess you can say, have a role. Because if we go into self-compassion, there are some bullet points. And of course, we're going to talk about the bullet points. But then I do want you to understand that they're going to be on the blog, so you can easily click the link below and you go straight to the blog. So for self-compassion, we're going to be focusing on self-kindness, common humanity, and mindfulness. Of course, we're going to describe it a little bit. Of course, there's already described on the blog, so I encourage you to read it. Self-esteem, we're going to be celebrating your achievements. We're going to challenge that negative belief. And this is what I was talking about early on with my clients. If they're coming in with some negative, or they think they're not good enough, they think they're not ready, and I say, listen, you are. We're going to challenge that negative belief that you have, and we're going to show you the opposite side. We surround ourselves with positivity. Typically, again, those people who are having that self-esteem with me, they surround themselves with me because I'm surrounding them on all angles. I'm not going to let them run away with this negativity thought. And I'm like, no. We are surrounding it. We're giving you positivity. We're giving you things that are going to uplift you and make you better. Surround yourself with positive people, right? Then we set realistic goals, and then, of course, engage in self-affirmation. Now, that is powerful, but then, of course, it's not for everybody. Then we get into self-care. The bullet points are very simple: physical, emotional, and mental care, right? We're going to separate those talking points. From there, we can make it very clean and cut what self-care is. Now, self-love can be a little bit more tricky, so there's a lot more bullet points. Practicing gratitude, setting boundaries, speaking kindly to yourself, prioritizing your well-being, and then accepting imperfections, right? So that's the all flowery, like the flowery stuff that we need to understand what love is, like lovey-dovey, right? So love is a plethora of emotions. It's going to also be a series of steps, as you can see. I do want to get straight into the conversation of the verses, right? Because I've talked about the verses before, like we did, passion versus gift, I think was the first one. It was a banger. Like, I don't know how many people read that one, and, Google loved that article. The verses series do really well, I have found, and I have to do my best during the podcast to kind of give the differences, but then the similarities, because people might say, if I'm versus something, right? Because the verse means you're opposing or against, there's going to be a winner, there's going to be a loser. Sometimes there could be a tie, right? But most of the time, there's going to be a winner and there's going to be a loser. We are not necessarily looking at the winning self here. We're not looking for the winning self-compassion or the winning self-esteem or the winning self-love or care or whatever, right? We're not looking at this is the one you need to focus on, because in a sense, they all create a harmony. If you don't have good esteem, then, self-love is already out the window. If you are not taking, care of yourself, then, compassion is probably one of the last things you're going to be thinking about on your list. We have to be able to look at the different nuances to how the mind is going to naturally sway when we're leaning on one maybe more heavily than the other, or if we are just absent totally in one area. I know from speaking from experience, many people, they lack the self-compassion part, where it's almost like they feel bad that they're not doing what they should be doing. This can be challenging, especially if you're a high achiever, right? You maybe have a perfectionistic type of mindset and you just don't want any downtime. And I was reading a book, it's called The Goal, and it's a novel. So it's, just a story. It was a story about a plant, and not like a physical plant, like a power plant, like an industry plant. It was a company that was trying to figure out how they can get out of the hole that they were in, because they were in threats to being closed down, and they had to figure out how they can make the company work. So there was a bunch of things and systems they had to implement it, and there's a bunch of things they had to unlearn so they can learn the things that were going to help them with their goal. And the goal for the story was to make money, or for the company was to make money. In a sense, we all have a goal for ourselves, but we might not know it, right? Maybe it's because we are not doing the work to figure out our identity. We are not doing the work to figure out what life we would like to have, or we would like to present to the world, or what type of character we would have, not only for what we present to people, but what we present to ourselves when the door and the lights are off, or the door can't be off unless you like unhinge it, but like the door is closed, the lights are off. What I have found is that many people operate differently when there's no one watching them. They say that success is not about what you do in front of people, it's what you do behind closed doors when no one is looking. So if we are familiar with any of the mindset of David Goggins, or just, any high level achiever, we're going to not only see their victories, but we're going to, have to look at their failures too. I know Jeff Bezos, when he tried to, I believe it was like start a phone company or something, right? It was like a phone brand. And he had lost millions of dollars or something. It might have even been like $1 billion, but I think it was just millions of dollars. All of the people were like, Jeff, like, aren't you upset that you lost all this money and this was a big failure? And then he's basically saying, he's like, you think that was a failure? You wait till you see what we have next. He wasn't afraid to fail. But yet we are quick to run away when things go bad, right? We want the good, right? That's just who we are as people, right? Our brain is situated to want the good things, right? If we get bad news, we feel bad. If we get good news, we feel good. And rightfully so. You don't want to get bad news and say, I feel great. But then at the same time, we can change our mindset that if we get something that's negative or might not be what we're looking for, we can also see it as an opportunity for things that have not been, can be making room for things that will be better for when it happens. So basically, meaning like if you get something, right? So let's say you won the lottery and you won, let's say you won $100,000. So when you win the $100,000, of course, you have to pay taxes. And before you know it, Uncle Sam wants a little bit more. Maybe, your cousins from every bit of life, they want a little bit of money. So before you know it, you have no money, right? You might say, well, winning the lottery was cool, right? I got $100,000. But what would happen if you just created a lifestyle where now your income was over $100,000? So maybe you're making $50,000 and now you do the work to increase your income to $150,000. You did not just win the lottery for $100,000. You literally have created a lifestyle of $100,000 more than what you have already had. So now you're at 150. Now you could be 250, 350, etc. But the process to get there is going to require you to look at who you are, who you're becoming. Are you on the right path? And if you can't even look at that, then you're going to be always dreaming of winning that $100,000 instead of creating a lifestyle of $100,000 plus dollars from whatever your current income is. So when we get into self-compassion, we talk about the self-kindness, we talk about common humanity, we talk about mindfulness, and we talked about mindfulness a lot on the podcast. But the two, self-kindness and common humanity, of course, we have to understand that, everyone is going through their challenges and their struggles and things like that. And we can't say that just because we did something that someone else should do it the same or even better than us. I know this is something that many children are dealing with their parents, because their parents, in their mind, they have a very harsh reality of what their childhood was, the traumas and the struggle. And now they're giving their children the life that they never had. And now their children are resenting it by being disconnected. And as a parent, you might say you have no right and no place to be unhappy and disconnected when you have all the toys, you have all the vacation, you have all the support, and yet the reality is they might not want any of that. Adversity builds someone. We as humans have to understand that we are going to make mistakes, and parents, when they have more financial means, oftentimes they burden their child with achievement. So now they're dealing with, my child is going to be this perfect thing, and I'm going to make sure they're perfect. I'm going to fight all their battles. And we are not being kind to their development. And it might seem like you are a great parent, but at the same time, you're stopping them. You are an inhibitor from their growth, stopping them. It's almost like you have a plant and you put the seed in the ground. You don't give the seed any sun. Well, of course, it's going to come out eventually, but if it doesn't get the sun to go through the whole process of the photosynthesis, the plant's not going to do too well. Certain plants, they need more sun. Certain plants don't need that much sun, depending on what type of plant they are. And of course, plant is the metaphor for your children, right? So you'd have different children that need certain things. And if you just operate in how you were, you have to be mindful that your child is not you. They are a part of you, right? They're a part of your family, but they are different, right? How they're growing up, the schools that they're in, technology, everything around them is different than when you were growing up, right? We have to be compassionate about that. And if we are not, then that's when they become this anxious, stressed out version. When if we gave them a little bit of compassion to see where they're coming from, and not just sending them off to therapy and sending them off to school and telling them to, get over it because I had to go through it much more difficult. You need to be able to listen to them almost as a bystander and not someone who has something to say back to them. Then we get into the self-esteem part. And this part is probably the most critical, not only for raising children, but for ourselves as adults, because we might have been growing up with a low self-esteem. We might not have valued ourselves. So we have to learn how to celebrate achievements. We have to challenge negative beliefs and thoughts that we have been told. Again, for people who are just learning about the podcast and the business Reven concepts, Reven is just never backward. what I wanted to do with Reven is I wanted to get rid of the negative beliefs that many people have with limits. Again, those limits are given to us from our teachers, from our parents, from our peers, maybe even. And then we can't even forget from ourselves. All of these different negative thoughts become anchors and begin to weigh us down little by little. What we have to do to get rid of that is we have to do the opposite. We have to surround ourselves with positive people. We have to surround ourselves with positive moments and positive beliefs. I do that with my clients again, because I understand if I can be the positive bit, cool. But then at the same time, if they're not showing up, I have to be that person. It's not bullying, but it's presenting the information in a way that you are accountable. We cannot keep on making excuses. So there's a little bit of difference there when it comes to coaching, right? Because we have to set realistic goals. And that's one of the things, right? We want something that's realistic. We don't want to say, well, I want to be the king of the world. Maybe, right, you can, or I'm not saying it's not possible, because it can be possible. But at the same time, like, what would you gain from this, right? Let's be realistic. Like, what would happen? Are you looking for more money? Looking for more fame? We can do that without you ruling the world. And there's easier paths and methods that can get us there a lot sooner. So we set realistic goals because we understand when we achieve things, we feel better about it. So think of like a kid learning how to swim for the first time. And I was a swim coach for many years. And one of the first things that happen when the kid learns how to swim, you can see their face and they're so proud. And you know who the first person they look at most of the time is, their parent. They look at mom, they look at dad, they go, look, I did it. They're so happy with themselves because they overcame maybe their fears of the water. And maybe they look at me and they go, yes, I did it. And I'm throwing them up in the air and I'm saying, whoa, you're a fantastic swimmer, but we got some work to do. I'm setting realistic goals for you, right? We've begun to swim. We're not done. So that, praise and stuff is necessary, but we get right back to work. And sometimes when I see a kid looking at their parent for that validation, I will take it away sometimes because I know they are, like, depending on the personality, again, you have to, be a good coach and like a good teacher. You have to see these things. If that child is going to benefit, or if that person is going to benefit from praise. Some people benefit from praise. Some people don't. All right. And you might think like everyone would benefit from praise. It's like almost like every plant would benefit from water. But have you seen a cactus? Have you had a cactus in your house and you try to water it every single day? If you had a cactus in your house and you try to water it every single day, it doesn't work. So depending on what you have to operate different. And I think about this story or this time when I was teaching this young boy how to swim, and his mom, very loving, caring, she didn't have any issues with how I was approaching swimming. It took a little bit longer to get him how to swim because he had some fears of the water and then maybe even some trusting issues. And it wasn't until he had his sister born and then like he started to get more brave and everything was developing nicely, but he had lower self-esteem as, a 2-year-old. And you have to ask yourself, if we didn't do something to give him higher level self-esteem and, a validation of confidence, he would turn out to be more anxious, stressed, and, all of these things later on in life. We had to give him the good stuff. And that's what I gave him. So he looked at the mom when he first swam and he was like, I did it. And then the mom was like, oh my God. And she was trying to, say, you're so great and everything. I nipped it in the butt. I said, no, I didn't like it. I don't like it. Right. And then you can see the look on his face. It wasn't sadness. It wasn't anger. It was confidence. It was a look saying, I am going to do something that you're going to like today. And sure enough, he did. Because if I said, you did great and you're fantastic and you're the best swimmer, and guess what? That lesson would have been a waste. The rest of the lesson would have been nothing. I need someone to go after something. I need them to be hungry, and I knew how to feed him. feed him the encouragement that he needed to level up. And so as soon as I said I didn't like it, the mom was like, she zipped her mouth and she was like, then the boy just kind of said, okay, let's do this, right? It was game on, right? He had the confidence within him. He knew I care. He knew he could trust me because that's what I do for the beginning of our lessons, especially for someone who's afraid of the water. We build the trust and I don't break it at all. Zero. I break zero trust because if I break it, it's hard to break, it's hard to get it back. Then we get into the whole aspect of self-care. And, going into this one, I might want to go into self-love first, but I am just going to kind of go self-care and then go into self-love because I do want to talk about something with self-love. But self-care is very simple. You have to be able to care for yourself physically, emotionally, and mentally. Now, this is your responsibility, number one. It is not someone else's responsibility to make sure that you have physical health or good physical health, good emotional health, and good mental health. It's not someone else's responsibility. I know sometimes in marriage, like, oh, I'm not happy. You're not making me happy anymore, sweetheart or husband or whatever, right? It is not their job to make sure that you're in good physical health. It's not their responsibility to make sure that you're emotionally sound and regulated. And it's not their responsibility to make sure that you're mentally in a good position. You are that person. You are in control of your thoughts, your feelings, and your actions. Okay. And basically physical, emotional, mental are just the thoughts, feelings, and actions too. So the actions are physical, emotions are going to be, thoughts, feelings, or it'd be our feelings. And then mental will be, of course, the mental, right? Thoughts, feelings, and our actions, thoughts, mental. What I can say is if you are not in control of these, your life is going to be a mess. It will. It will. And what we do typically in the beginning stages of the self-care process, when I see it, I typically don't say, well, you need self-care. If I see that this is stopping you from going after some goal that you're trying to go for. So like, let's say you want relationship coaching. Self-care, I'm not going to say, well, we need to work on your physical, then we need to work on your emotion, then we need to work on your mental. You might not need it, right? So we just figure out where you are. And if we need to adjust, we adjust. It's very similar to how, coaching is in any sport. If I see that you're really good at something, but you need some proficiency in some other area that is going to help you elevate your game, that's what we're going to be working on. When we start swimming, just as an example, I make sure that there's good kicks in the beginning, right? Of course, you have to have a nice, good balance. You can't, be making your body more heavier in certain areas, things like that, right? You have to use water to your to your benefit, right? The buoyancy factor. We try to make you as, nimble as possible in the water. Typically, we do that by just making you super calm, super good, just mellow. The physical, the emotional, and the mental state is basically that. It's just like smooth. Everything is smooth. There's no bumpy road. There's no waves. Everything is just smooth. When that is happening, right, we can build, right? It's like you don't want to build a home on sand, right? You need a strong foundation. And what we typically do in this area of self-care is we look at what type of foundation do we have and can we build on it? If we don't have a good foundation for whatever reason, we begin to build. Now, going into self-love, and this might be the most controversial one because self-love is getting a bad rap. People, I don't know if you know about it. And basically self-love is, well, you just have to love yourself no matter who you are, what you do, etc. At the same time, we have to be accountable for who we are, what we do, and if we are going to get there. Because it's something that many people are going to say is someone else's problem if they're not, where they need to be. Or they might just say, not today, I'll do it next year, right? Look at New Year's resolution. It's full of self-love, full of self, like actualization. I'm going to do this, but when? When are you going to do it? You could do it when you like run out of time and you're on your deathbed? No, we need to figure out what we need to do. So self-love is separated into many different areas. Practice gratitude, set boundaries, speaking kindly to yourself, prioritizing your well-being, and accepting your imperfection. Now, all of this sounds very flowery. How I coach is a little bit different. I'm more into the sugar and spice mentality, where self-love is cool, but we take away quite a bit of this here because yes, we are going to practice gratitude. It's beneficial to us. We are going to set boundaries, but healthy boundaries, because I'm not going to say, like, you can't have any more cake or you can't have any more ice cream, because self-love says, well, if you want it and, it's going to make you feel better, then go get it. Right. But at the same time, it's like, what is our goal? Right. So there's going to be a boundary that's going to either keep us away from our goal or keep us in front of our goal. All right. So we would like to be in front of our goal, meaning we're always present, right? We always are able to accomplish it. Typically, if you are going to eat ice cream, it's because you have been doing great all week. Some people, they call it cheat meals. And I'm not saying that cheat meals are good or anything, but if you have worked out, all week and you've been doing really good, maybe you get a cheat meal. But then that's only looking at the factor of what is our goal and what is our timeline for that goal to be completed, right? If we have 30 days to do something, let's say going, wedding or whatever, we might not have any cheat days. All right. So our boundary might be very strict. It just depends on the timeline, the goal, and where we are currently. Of course, we have to look at the aspect of speaking kindly to ourselves. I remember I had a guest on the podcast. She was a mindset coach, and we had a good conversation. But what I asked was, I was like, can negativity be used to our benefit? She basically said yes, but basically say no, positivity is better. And I understand why she said positivity is better. It's like, would you rather have a coach that is like saying you can do this, or a coach that's always yelling at you, making sure that you do it? And typically the coach that is saying that you can do this and giving you positive encouragement is going to be better than someone who's yelling at you, giving you the same results. Because at some point, it's going to tear you down, that negativity. Now, of course, some people thrive in that environment, like David Goggins. He, like he'll call you like a little bitch. He's like, stop being a little bitch. And sure enough, you're like, whoa, like, what about the self-love, man? And he's like, it's not here, right? Stop being a little whatever. So he has a very different way of speaking. And so you have to figure out what level of speech you need for yourself, or, a conversation or communication you need for yourself. Some people, they need, very loving and caring type of personality. And sure enough, you can find a coach for that here. And, at Reven Concepts, we have had, I can't even tell you how many coaches come on the podcast. And then, of course, we have different coaches that work for us. So you can find a coach that fits your personality. Now, most of the time, I'm able to fit most people's personalities because I see what they need. And I'm like, okay, I can do this. Now, if they have a preference, sure enough, we can get you a different coach. At the end of the day, it's going to be something that you decide, what type of well-being do you want? Do you want a well-being that is going to be, presented to you in a long road, or do you want a more straight shot? Some people, they like to take the windy road. Some people, they just want results. And I know for me, I am result orientated, and I like to get results as quick as possible, because I understand something about the mind. If we do not get results as quick as possible, the mind is going to say, well, we are doing this, but it's not working. So getting good results fast is better than getting results that is going to take a very long time to get to. I understand this happens with therapy, and this is why I'm against a lot of therapy. Therapy can be good for going through, trauma and stuff like that. But think about it. A person who's in therapy is in therapy for like 3 or 4 years before they graduate therapy. And then for me in coaching, in 3 months, I got you good, ready to go. And now you're over here winning in life again. I think 3 months is better than 3 years. But then again, hey, you might be a different person. You might want to wait 3 years to be your better self and your best self. Sure. Right. I'm not going to stop you. Maybe that's your self-love. But then, of course, you do have to understand that nothing is perfect. Right? Like, you have to accept things are not going to be perfect. You're going to make a mistake. Some things in life you can't do over, but we learn from our mistakes. And so all of these different factors here in this blog, this article, self-compassion versus self-esteem versus self-care versus self-love, is going to be a great read, especially around this time, because we are going to be presented with so many opportunities to be around family, be around friends, to be in that holiday spirit or the New Year spirit, whatever it be, for us to be that person to enhance our current situation, for us to take action. If you are struggling with taking action more readily, of course, read this blog a couple times. If you can't find the answer, of course, reach out to us, get a free consultation, begin the process to look at the areas where you need some adjustment in. This is not to say that you're broken. This is not to say that you can't do this by yourself. It's just the testament that as people, we can grow together. We can grow stronger, right? Of course, if you want to do it by yourself, check out revenconcepts.com. All of the blogs, all the articles, they're going to be great roadmaps for you to get there. But then sometimes people, they just need that outside effect, that outside accountability. I'm not sure who you are, but what I can tell you is if you do the work, you will know exactly who you are. So all the links are going to be in the description box below. So check out the blog, check out the article, sign up for a consultation, and begin that process today for a person who truly knows and can actualize yourself 100%.